So we chose to do Airbnb, which is an online platform that promotes alternative types of lodging experiences. And we wanted to look at the demographics of New York City based on, what type of housing is being offered through these spaces and what kind of renters are loaning out these spaces. So the number of records for uh, for different properties, we predicted that there would be more apartments available than any other property. We just thought this just because when you think of New York City and you think of the New York area, it's really apartment-driven housing. And then we didn't really have an idea of any other second type of housing that it could offer. So, this was supported, as you can see. The apartments have 27,102 records. That means that there are 27,102 apartments online and available for rental on Airbnb. And then in second came housing, with around 2,000 offers. This can be attributed to the Staten Island area where it's less apartment style and less skyscraper styles and more family living, home type areas.
Awesome. And as you can see from this graph, Manhattan has around 24,041 beds available. Our hypothesis was that Manhattan would actually be the most populated area alongside Brooklyn, but we were actually surprised to see that areas like the Bronx and Staten Island had less space available. Of course, this makes sense because tourism is less likely in these areas and they're less famous. They're also significantly less dense, but we were expecting a number between the thousands, especially when Manhattan had 24,000 spaces. It was just really incredible to see that disparity. So that was really interesting. Awesome. And now let's talk about the density per zip code. Our hypothesis was that, of course, in the Manhattan area, there would be a higher price associated with these listings. And as supported by the graph, you're seeing that the Manhattan area is significantly more expensive between the zip codes of 10001 and 10035. This information is super important actually, because this allows hosts to properly strategize when they're investing in properties or listing prices so that buyers are not, so that they can list prices that are competitive within the area. But this information also helps buyers because it can narrow their search to fit their particular specifications. Interesting enough, though, it was surprising to see that the downtown area of Manhattan was drastically less expensive than its neighboring area codes. So if you're looking for a place in Manhattan to stay, downtown might be the place to go. All right, and now let's talk about the price over the year of membership. So we hypothesize that the average price of these listings will grow exponentially as hosts join over time. But there was actually a conflict in 2008 to 2014 that kind of stunted this growth. And that's because New York upheld some certain laws that considered some of these Airbnbs illegal hotels. And so it became a lot more scarce. A lot more hosts were unable to host in that area. And as a result, we saw a lot less listings and a lot cheaper listings as well. This is really interesting information because if you actually study scarcity in business, scarcity technically increases demand and value and price. But right now we're seeing scarcity decrease price. So this is actually an anomaly according to certain popular theories.
So the average price per night by neighborhood, we really thought that Manhattan would have the highest price point. This was just due to the tourism in that area and Times Square being such a largely populated area. And, through this circle graph, we chose that, I mean, we were able to see that Manhattan had the highest price per night at $198.50. We chose this circle graph just because it actually showed sizing and it made a lot more sense. And then, as you can see, this relates to the density map, which is below. And you can see that the Manhattan area, which is what is in red, which has 150,000 people in that area for a population. So, because this area is more populated, you're also going to have more people wanting to come to that area. So the number of beds per property type. Our hypothesis was we thought that the houses would offer more beds than the other properties types just because houses are more spacious and they offer more rooms to be able to move around in. And while we did see that that was supported, that, there were, the most amount of beds in houses, it also was tied with apartments, which was very surprising to us just because apartments in New York are known in the city of New York are known to be smaller, not have as many spacing. And so we did go in and look at, how they could have fit these beds in there. And a lot of apartments for Airbnb are set up to be Airbnb apartments with, bunk beds or pull out couches, alternative sleeping areas that offer a lot more beds, whereas the housing styles had more actual beds of, a queen size bed and a bedroom rather than a bedroom with 4 bunk beds in it. And then the rating score by the number of reviews. So we thought that the more reviews that were put up out there, the better the score would be. This was just due to the fact that the better the review a person has, the more people are going to want to stay there, and then that allows for more opportunity for even more reviews. You can clearly see this as, there's more opportunity for reviews with apartments, and so the number of reviews is way higher, and then with that the score is even the review score is higher. And then you can see that as the companies, if you follow the purple dotted line, as the companies number of reviews went up, so did their review score rating. And then Airbnb actually offers different category breakdowns so that, maybe you want to see, is the location good, how the communication with the host was, cleanliness, because maybe you don't care as much about location, but you want to make sure that the cleanliness is a 5-star. It really lets you break everything down and makes it a lot easier to know what you're looking at.
Awesome. And as you can see here, this is the number of hosts that joined over the years. We hypothesized that the number of host members would grow exponentially over the years in New York. But as we're seeing, there was a huge hiccup in 2008 and 2014 that really prevented a lot of Airbnb hosts from either staying in the industry or penetrating the market, just because of New York state law that was either upheld or enforced. I know that in 2014, there was a law that uh, really affected advertisements for multiple dwellings in a building with 3 or more permanent residential units for rent for any period less than 30 days. So that really affected the growth. And as you can see, this graph kind of mirrors our price graph, and that at that time when New York started enforcing these laws, particularly in 2014, we're seeing a decrease of hosts join the market just because, again, it's more difficult. There's a lot more laws that someone would have to memorize and learn and navigate before they can join that. And so that's why we saw that sort of dip. So Airbnb has just, according to our hypothesis, we saw a lot of things that agreed with how the flow of Airbnb's business in New York was. It's increased over the years. Of course, as a result of 2014's restrictions, a lot of hosts had to abandon their Airbnbs or could not host in New York. We saw a drop in the overall price, as well as the overall number of hosts that were in New York. As a summary, we knew that Manhattan was going to be the most populated area, and it was. We were surprised at some of the surrounding areas that were less dense and less populated were not hosting as many rooms. We expected the number to be in the thousands, but it was actually in the hundreds, which surprised us. But regardless, we still think that it's profitable to host an Airbnb. It just is difficult because new hosts will have to navigate new regulations and laws that they might not find in their home state. So it's just a matter of keeping that in mind and making sure that new hosts or existing hosts are having a legal team ready or lawyer ready um, to review any upcoming legislation that's available.
Thank you so much.